Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, and I feel so lucky right now because we've had some pretty big names on this podcast over the last 10 days alone. I think we've had Poly, Dentons, Qualcomm, Crestron, Unilever and HubSpot. They're just the ones that I'm thinking off the top of my head there. And hearing directly what conversations that businesses like that are having with their global client base and how they're all leveraging technology to get through this difficult period is priceless, because I really think it can help other businesses follow in those footsteps and see opportunities where others are only seeing challenges right now. But of course, I'm going to get a little bit cheesy here. I'd find myself even luckier to be able to serve you, my audience, every single day, all over the world. It's a role I do take seriously. I think when you're listening to this, I'm probably going to be on holiday, but you don't know that because there's always 7 episodes each week waiting for you. And if you are based in India, this podcast has recently been added to Gaana.com, which I believe is India's biggest streaming service with over 150 million users. So if you have found me on there and you're new to this little podcast community that we've got here, please send me a message and say hello, and I'll let you know how at the end of the podcast. But on with today's show. And Infor is a global leader in business cloud software specialized by industry with 17,300 employees and 68,000 customers in more than 170 countries. Infor software is designed for progress, and Rick Ryder, he caught my attention recently because he believes that the scope of automation will evolve from discrete tasks and transactions based on static rules to automating knowledge work. And he believes that they will require moving beyond RPA to developing a HyperAutomation strategy that focuses on optimizing digital processes from everything from IT infrastructure to customer-facing applications. So I invited him on the podcast today to learn more about the 3 pillars of winning a HyperAutomation strategy and so much more. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to the US so we can speak with Rick Ryder. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Rick. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Neil. Thanks for having me on the podcast. For the audience, my name is Rick Ryder. I'm a VP of Product Management at Infor. Infor being one of the leading providers of enterprise software out there in the market, kind of in that top 3 echelon. But for myself, I'm responsible for a platform within Infor we call Infor OS. But really just consider it a collection of what we call common, shared, and innovation-related technologies that all of our products and industry suites use. So we actually span across all of our different 20, 30 different industries, all of our, 10s, 20s, hundreds of products across Infor. So we've got a pretty unique experience when it comes to different types of customers and different unique situations. But the collection of technology we work in spans from user experience, integration, automation, which is a huge growing topic, security, document management, data management, and of course, artificial intelligence. All of these types of technologies fall into this Infor OS umbrella, which I'm responsible for.
And before we started recording today, we were discussing what a crazy year it's been for everyone. And yes, Infor builds business software for specific industries in the cloud. But what I also find fascinating is you've got over 17,000 employees and over 68,000 customers and a reputation for building software designed for progress. So with that in mind, I'm curious, what challenges have you had to overcome at Infor this year?
Yeah, it's been interesting, and it's a good question because a lot of the ways that our customers have adopted and started to use our technologies is the exact same transition and pattern that we've gone through at Infor. So Infor, historically being primarily an acquisition-based company, Infor OS, our group, is all organically built. So we were trying to solve all of these different unique challenges that we have, whether it be a disparate workforce when it comes to collaboration within our enterprise software that we ourselves use, or whether it's automation techniques on how do we make our systems, communicate to one another, or how do we start to be more proactive and predictive with our analytics and those types of things. So it really started off as solving a lot of these Infor problems or opportunities, depending on how you want to frame the particular opportunity. And now we're seeing our customers adopt the exact same practices that we've been putting into place, which is our value prop is more about, we want to create this ecosystem for rapid innovation and ROI, which is great, especially during these times of COVID related and all these uncertainties, because it makes us very nimble in our business practice, and we can be very flexible to adjust, whether it's from a cost efficiency or just an overall business process.
And before you came on the podcast today, I was doing a little bit of research on you and Infor as a company, and I quickly learned that your belief about the scope of automation will evolve from discrete tasks and transactions that are based on static rules to automating knowledge work. Can you expand on that belief, just for anyone that's new to this and just hearing about you for the first time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that our customers and just the industry in general is struggling with is this concept of out of the box, because I think we overgeneralize the opportunity and what it takes to make these automation techniques a little bit more progressive. So, if I'm asking something of my system in a unique way to where I want to, ask a question and return, what I might have in inventory or those types of things, that's a very, one transaction based opportunity. But as you're able to create these different opportunities together. So an example might be, if we get really progressive here, if we're doing something in the predictive maintenance space with like our enterprise asset maintenance customers, well, what that actually feeds is that upstream, we can actually create intelligent inventory practices to where now less about saving money on the workforce side. We can actually look at, well, can we be saving more cash on hand by not carrying these inventory items that sit on the shelves for 30 days because our maintenance patterns don't really justify that. So that's really what I mean. Our belief is like the systematic connection of systems will be what drives it. Less about the traditional RPA sense, but more about the systematic automation that we can create to create all these cost efficiencies and new opportunities to build new business opportunities, because we have this harmonization across our entire ecosystem.
And I'm curious, from those conversations that you're having with your customers, are you noticing a renewed focus on driving organizational efficiencies through a shift of hyper-automation mindset to streamline the day-to-day operations and improve customer employee satisfaction and protect the bottom line? Because I think we can all agree that they're the boxes that everyone wants to tick. But are people doing that, or are you still noticing a little resistant to change?
Yeah, it's interesting. Especially over the last 6 months. Obviously, everyone's seeing the pretty dramatic increase when it comes to cloud spend. I think the latest is 11% quarter over quarter that we're seeing across the entire industry. But it's not necessarily just about cost savings. We are seeing a tremendous uplift in innovation techniques or innovation projects. And maybe it's a result of customers having a bit more time and focus to push onto these projects. But I think they're realizing as they move to the cloud, it's not just about the infrastructure and the managerial IT budget perspective. It's how you can take advantage of so much more progressive technology, because you're no longer on a legacy code base or trying to manage things yourself. So we have seen a huge uplift to say, hey, if we've got a distribution customer that wants to automate shipping and receiving through things like Alexa devices, and then behind the scenes, we're creating this hyper automation of looking at, okay, what are our current inventory? Do we need to reorder more? Was there something wrong with this item that we're receiving? How do we automate that back upstream to my supplier to make sure that's corrected, so that now those employees can spend more time on other either operational efficiency techniques or more value producing activities? But we are seeing a whole host of this. And it's very interesting. You would think that it's all about cost cutting, and maybe that is the catalyst, right? But we are seeing a tremendous amount once they get to cloud and they see what's available to them in a cost efficient manner. We're seeing all of these different projects really start to spin up.
And I appreciate this is a pretty big question, because it's something that everybody's chasing at the moment. But in your opinion, and everything that you're seeing at the moment, what is the key to remaining competitive in the post-COVID landscape and enabling businesses to bounce back? Is there a secret sauce there, do you think?
Yeah, I really think it's all about being nimble and flexible. And how do I maintain that? And it's I do want to emphasize some of the issues that we've seen, and we went through it as Infor as a company several years back when we first started getting into these techniques. Is you can't just focus on one project, right? Because if you focus on one, whatever the buzzword may be today, if it's RPA, if it's intelligent process automation, HyperAutomation, if it's AI, machine learning, if you're just focusing on that small piece, that's what really skyrockets the implementation time and the cost before the business actually sees the benefits. So from our perspective, we really think that foundation level platform and the things that we really take to heart within Infor OS is, can I make sure that I have the ecosystem available that makes me nimble? And that starts at integration. And then how do I get my data into a single source of truth, as we all like to call it, for my analytics? How can I get more progressive? How do I create this automation ecosystem for all of my different systems? Because then it's almost like plug and play. It's as close to out of the box as you can get, because out of the box really implies that everyone's business is the same. And we know that's not true. So how do you create that entire ecosystem? Every one of these innovation projects never involves just one technology. So how do we create this ecosystem to where now I can do 5, 10, 20 different projects on the same investment? And it also leaves less complexities on the how to achieve all that. And I think that's honestly why we're seeing such a huge trend in a lot of these projects beyond just moving to cloud off of on-premise systems.
And assuming we do have a business leader that's listening to this podcast that could be located anywhere in the world that passionately wants to lead a company through these uncharted digital waters, I think it's great that we've got you on here today because, like you said, you've been here before, you've done this, you've gone through it before. So can you walk me through the 3 pillars of winning hyper-automation strategy that listeners could possibly listen to, learn from, and take action themselves?
Yeah. To put it into like 3 sort of pillars, I think first and foremost, it begins with that foundation, right? And I'm not just talking about the foundation of, common technology systems. I'm really talking about the more progressive systems to update your infrastructure, right? Because if I can do something with traditional RPA, and I call it traditional because I think we overgeneralize what RPA and robotic process automation is today. But if you really focus on the foundation of updating your systems to a common innovation layer, that's going to open the door to a whole host of different downstream opportunities to where now the business isn't opening up the checkbook for every single project that could be a year-long, time frame before we even begin the next. So it certainly starts with the foundation. The next one is the change management. And this one's very obvious to a lot of different people, but change management is very difficult in these sort of things. Everyone is very keen on staying static. The business is good at what it does. We don't necessarily have to change, but we all know that we're going to have to at some point. So if you have a system that allows employees to use and execute work in manners in which they are familiar, but guess what? We've also got an evolving workforce coming in that they've got a whole different paradigm on how they want to do different things. Well, if you've got a system in place that can execute both of those, it helps the change management side. So they kind of feed off of one another. Do I have this platform for my ERP, as the analyst community is starting to refer to it as? Do I have the change management in place to say, hey, questioning things is okay because it's going to make us all a little bit better at our jobs? And then finally, I think it really comes down to, can we just maintain focus on not the how, but what do we want to do? Because again, if you start with that foundation, if you have those sort of systematic pieces in place, you can quickly say, oh, I want to pilot this project, or I want to, create this sort of a test scenario before I even go employ it. If you've got that foundation in place, you can certainly do that. So if I were to generalize in those 3 areas, that would probably be it.
And of course, many businesses will know that they need to change and know what they need to do, but they're also forced to do more with less and they're lacking resources. So what would you say to those that know they need to optimize digital processes from IT infrastructure to something more customer-facing applications, but are just lacking the resources to make it happen because they seem to be caught between a rock and a hard place there? Yeah,
that's absolutely right. And I would argue that's That's ultimately why we're seeing such a dramatic shift to cloud technology.
Yeah.
One feeds the other. If you're looking at it from just a pure cost perspective, which many are, and there's no harm in that, but there is a tremendous value to immediately see, oh, well, now I can do so many more cost-effective downstream projects because I have this infrastructure that I'm no longer hosting myself and figuring out, well, if I've got to integrate two different systems together, not to mention put automation on top of that. Now I want to do some HyperAutomation and inject some machine learning insights on top of that. Oh boy, that seems like a hard task, but if you have that platform in place, now you can start checking off those boxes with little overhead. I mean, we have customers just in the machine learning space where they might have one or two, that's it, data scientists or business analysts that are a little bit more mathematically inclined, whatever it may be, that citizen development mindset. Now they've built a change management practice to go after these projects, to start in one department, spend a couple of weeks there, now move on to the next, because they have this ecosystem that allows them with little overhead and little IT budget to go off and do these different projects. And it starts with the migration to cloud, but you really have to have that technology platform in place to be able to really do those downstream effects.
Excellent. And if we were to fast forward 5 years from now, how do you think today's business landscape and how we're working will compare with the future? Because it feels like we're in this real transition phase at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I without trying to have the audience thinking that I'm way too far out into the future, but I really think that we are on the cusp of, we've talked about things like chatbots, and I actually hate that term because it goes back to the automation paradigm that I sort of subscribe to, that it's not just about these transactional things that chatbots are traditionally built to do. Well, if I can chain and orchestrate all these different things together, you get into hyperautomation. But I think the way we execute work, even in front of, say, web browsers, is going to dramatically shift. What if I could just speak into existence things that happen behind the scenes? Like we see it really heavily in the commercial space. Everyone is using either a Google Home or an Alexa device to do all these things. It's just we have not yet flipped the corner to completely being able to trust and employ and use that within an enterprise or a business ecosystem. I think that's fundamentally going to change. The entire user experience is going to be so different because as we get onto more modern systems to where all this orchestration can happen behind the scenes, and guess what? That provides even better data because now you're almost creating a master data management type ecosystem, because if I'm speaking into a device, now the systems can control how to manipulate that data. There's no manual input. There's no errors that can be done. There's all these checks that can be done behind the scenes. Now I would argue getting out of like the manual entry and the web browser and all these different things makes the work that much cleaner. But of course it comes with, getting to be able to trust these different systems. So I think that evolution is going to happen over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, to where the way we interact and talk, like physically talk and interact with our data and systems is going to be completely different because of this hyperautomation that's available today.
I completely agree with you. And there is a great deal of work, though, that needs to be done until we get to that place. And it's easy to get distracted when we're surrounded by so much uncertainty at the moment. So can I ask that you leave the listeners with a positive message about that road ahead and what excites you personally about the future?
It's fun. It's so fascinating and fun. And if you really embrace that, when we're talking about enterprise systems, it's not always that fun, right? We're talking about financials. We're talking about manufacturing. We're talking about distribution, but it starts to give that flavor of it's my everyday work. Well, how can I make it that much more fun? How can I put my own spin on different things? That's what excites me. If we go and talk to the distribution example that I mentioned about with one of our customers earlier, if I can, as an employee, think of a way to where I can easily reduce a 30-minute process down to 15 seconds, and now I'm just interacting with an Alexa device. How fascinating is that? How much value do you get out of that personally? Not to mention, now I can go work on something else, and now I'm increasing the value to my company to where it's not about cost savings on me personally. It's about cost savings and value opportunities that I'm creating for the entire business. It's just so fascinating, the things that you can do with the technology once you have that foundation in place.
I love that. And an absolutely perfect moment to end on. But before I do let you go, can I ask that you point everyone in the direction of where they can find you online, and equally contact your team if they've got any questions about any of the topics we discussed today, or even just keep up to speed with the developments that you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. We just recently updated a lot of our branding and different marketing materials. If you want to check us out at infor.com, our specific space for InforOS is infor.com/technology. You're going to see us start to produce a whole lot more collateral out there and working with the different analyst communities, because we do believe that we are creating this ERP platform ecosystem, and there's so much, really compelling, fun things and quick ROI scenarios that's cost effective that we can do very, very quickly. But if you have any questions, you can contact me at rick@infor.com, or follow us. Go check out our YouTube channel for InforOS. Just search that and it'll take you directly to it. We've got a lot of demo materials, customer stories, all that good stuff. We'd love to hear from anyone and everyone.
Fantastic. And I completely agree with what you've said throughout the interview there, that for businesses to remain competitive in this post-COVID landscape, they must start developing robust cloud strategies that combine data across AI, ML, NLP, process mining, and all those other technologies needed to make hyper-automation the success that it can be. And it can be a little bit daunting at the moment, but where we're heading is an incredibly exciting space. And a big thank you for sharing that vision with us today. So thanks for joining me today, Rick.
Absolutely. Thank you, Neil. Enjoyed it.
Hyper-automation is set to be one of the largest tech trends emerging in the wake of COVID-19. And with a renewed focus on driving organisational efficiencies, businesses should shift to a hyper-automation mindset to streamline day-to-day operations, improve customer and employee satisfaction, and protect the bottom line. There are a few things that I took away from chatting with Rick there, and also determining how artificial intelligence and machine learning functions will perform in conjunction with other components of your business and augment human capabilities to achieve an end-to-end process automation. And those successful in maximising impact with cloud technology should be able to establish a clear view of all data sources, and then leverage cloud technology to deliver that data to applications for intelligent process automation. Now, I appreciate me having a conversation here, furiously making notes and lessons that I learned along the way is incredibly easy. But putting that into practice, this is where I want you to share your thoughts, your insights, your experiences, whatever it may be. And equally, if you've got any questions, feel free to send them over too. My door is open to all of you. Please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. You'll find 1,300 podcast interviews there, and also how you can work with me if you did want help launching your own business or thought leadership podcast, or even just helping with your business thought leadership blogs. But I've taken up far too much time of yours already, especially as we've got another podcast interview coming your way tomorrow. Just a genuine, heartfelt thank you from me for tuning to listen to this podcast. I appreciate you all so much. I would never take you for granted, and so a big thank you. And of course, until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.